In today's video, I want to go over a few different ways that you can fund your startup without taking any outside investment or using up all of your savings. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Connor, and on this channel I help people who cannot code build online businesses with no-code tools like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. So in today's video, I want to answer a question that I get somewhat frequently, and that is, how do you fund your startup if you don't have access to investors or you haven't saved up funds to hire a team of people? So I've been working on the Unicorn Factory, my own startup, for the last few years, and I set the Unicorn Factory up without taking any outside investment and basically self-funding the entire project. But in the past, I've also worked in startups in various marketing roles where they have been funded. So I've actually had a chance to see both sides of getting a business up and running. So I just want to say straight off the bat that I personally don't believe that one strategy is better than the other. They are two very different strategies, and each of those strategies comes with its own pros and cons. So it's really up to you to do your own type of research to figure out what works best for you and the type of business that you want to build. But I do want to say that if you do decide to self-fund your business, that doesn't exclude you from potentially raising money for your startup in the future. So before we get into it, if you are new to this channel and you want to learn more about these startup-y type things, or you want to learn how you can build your own online businesses with no-code tools like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier, then subscribe to the channel. I am creating a whole bunch of videos that I think would have been very useful to me when I started my own business. So if you are currently at that stage, it will be right for you. But with that being said, let's get into the first point. Okay, so the first option, and probably out of all of the options that I'm going to be presenting, the least popular option, is to get a job. Now, obviously, if you have already had that first taste of entrepreneurship or being your own boss, then returning to a job is going to be incredibly difficult. I personally have been in that situation. When I finished university, I dived straight up into the startup world, and the first startup that I did, I just decided to go all in on it. I didn't actually have a source of income at the time, and my thinking was kind of that my idea is so brilliant that we are going to be making thousands of dollars in no time, and I'll be able to pay myself then, so I'll just defer my payment until that point. So in theory, that sounds like a very good strategy up until the point when that income suddenly isn't there and you now have to figure ways out to cover your living expenses. And I personally always thought that you just had to go all in and full commitment. But if you do just dive into something without a plan on covering your essential living expenses, you'll find yourself in a situation where you won't be able to run your business properly. So cover those foundations first by finding some source of income that allows you to pay for your day-to-day things, and that will allow you to then build your business without having to worry about all those other types of expenses. And then you can work towards slowly reducing the amount of hours that you do in your day-to-day job, and then hopefully in the future you'll be in a situation where you'll be able to pay yourself enough to quit that job completely. So one last thing that I'd say about getting a job is that you can actually be very strategic about the type of job that you do while you build up your startup. So when I was working on my first startup, which was a little Tinder for food deals app, I actually got a job with Uber, and I actually learned a lot about building marketplaces. I learned about the dynamics of demand and supply. So when you go out and look for ways to make income, you can actually look for a job that will essentially teach you everything that you need to know about running your business. So just an example of that is, if you are going to take up the marketing side of your business, then you could potentially get a job with a marketing agency and just kind of pick up some of the things that they do so that you can then apply those learnings to your business. But now on to point number two. So number two is getting into consulting or freelancing. Now I think amongst bootstrappers, that is probably the most popular way to fund your startup in the very early days, because you get to learn skills in a real practical setting. You get to typically make quite a bit more money, and you continue to be your own boss. Now, this is something that I did a lot when I started the Unicorn Factory. In fact, I actually started the Unicorn Factory because I was looking for additional ways to make money while I was working on all of my different projects. And basically the way it works is you take some of the things or the skills that you have learned and you help other businesses solve that part of their business. So I, for example, learned a bit about Facebook ads. I did a few little courses, and then as a way to basically fund my businesses, I would help local businesses with their Facebook ads. So you're gonna have to learn these skills anyway if you are going to build your own startup. So while you are building it up, just offer it as a service, and you can do it through sites like Upwork, Fiverr. If you're in New Zealand, you can obviously do it through Unicorn Factory. And that is just a really good way to make money as you start your business. Okay, so point number 3 kind of ties into point number 2, and that is if you are working on a startup and you've identified a problem in your market, to actually reach out to customers in your market to ask them to pay for you to build the platform. Now, this sometimes seems quite counterintuitive to people because they kind of expect that first you need to build the platform and then people will come and pay for it. But I have seen this happen often enough to know that if you are solving a problem big enough in a market, then there will be people invested in having you get this up and running. So being able to go and actually get them to pay for a solution to be built is a really great way to get access to a decent amount of revenue fast, and that will then also allow you to get your platform up and running without having to spend any of your own money. So I actually had some friends who worked in the construction industries that did exactly this. So they went out to the market with the problem that we're trying to solve. They had a chat to a whole bunch of businesses about it, and they actually had one of the biggest players in the market agree to them paying to build the MVP. And so as soon as they got to that agreement, they were able to hire a team of developers who went out and built that first version of their platform that they could then use and resell to other companies in the construction industry. Now, a very valid question that can come up in this particular scenario is why on earth would a business agree to fund the build of an MVP of your startup if they could just go out and build it themselves? Now, there are multiple reasons why a business might decide to go and do that. Probably one of the most common reasons is that it is not part of their core business. So someone who is in the construction industry are oftentimes just focused on construction. They're not just suddenly going to turn into a software company overnight, even though some companies may have done it in the past. It's pretty uncommon to see. And then the second option is it makes more sense financially to actually just invest less money into someone who is already building out the platform instead of hiring an agency to go and build it for you. For starters, it will cost significantly more to have an agency build a custom solution for you. And secondly, you also have to do some project management things that will also take up quite a bit of your resources. So actually finding a startup that is working on this particular problem and basically funding them to build the first version of the solution is actually a very sensible strategy for a business. I also personally think that that is probably the coolest way to actually get your startup up and running, because you're just mitigating so much risk by validating your market, by having your customers pay for the build of your platform straight from the outset. And that brings me to point number 4, which is the B2C version of this, which is just doing pre-sales. Now, obviously you might find it a little bit more difficult to actually find customers in the consumer space who will be willing to pay for your MVP. But because you oftentimes deal with a lot more consumers, there's actually a really great workaround to start generating revenue for your business before you've actually started working on the build of your platform, and that is by doing pre-sales. Now, pre-sales is a really great way for you to start generating revenue before you've actually built your platform. Now, if you've ever been on a website like Kickstarter, you'll know that most of those businesses do exactly that. Before they actually start with the build of their platform, they actually go and put offers out there so that people who are interested in what they're working on can actually put their money up and pre-buy whatever they're working on. So I'll probably say that this way of generating revenue for your business is probably on par with what other bootstrappers do when it comes to consulting or freelancing. It's incredibly popular, and it's just such a great way to also validate your business. And so I've seen a whole bunch of people do it for courses. I've seen people do it for subscription services. I myself have done it on the Unicorn Factory. I have sold early adopter plans for some of my memberships. And so if you do want to give customers who you are building this platform for an opportunity to basically invest in the business, invest in the platform, and also invest in you, then doing pre-sales is a really, really great way to do that. And then the final option is just to learn how to do it yourself, at least in the beginning, and keep the costs of building your business low. On honestly, I always think that people overestimate how much it actually costs these days to build and run an online business. When I started the Unicorn Factory, I think I paid around $150 to $200 a month to keep the entire platform alive. And that was mostly paying for tools like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. But it also included a little bit of a marketing budget that I could use to basically promote the platform to other people. So if you do have $200 that you can invest into your platform every single month, and you're willing to put in the time to learn the different skills, then that is absolutely a viable option. Now, if you end up going down this particular path, there's only one real big trade-off that you're going to have to deal with, and that is the less you invest in your platform, the longer it will take for you to get to where you're trying to go. Now, there are a few different ways to look at it. First of all, let's look at it from a real practical perspective. The less money you spend on advertising and promotion, the less people will visit your website, the less people will sign up, and the less people will pay you. So the more you spend, in theory, should lead to more people knowing about what you're doing, which should lead to you getting more revenue faster. Now, the exact same principle applies to learning certain skills. Now, I can tell you with 100% confidence that all of these skills that you're going to need to learn in order to develop your platform can be found online. Now, I learned all of the things I needed to know about Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier by using forums, YouTube, Discord, and a whole bunch of other things. So if you have the time but not the money to invest in learning certain skills, then just know that the tools and resources are out there. On the other hand, if you just want to get things going and you don't want to waste months and months going through different resources on the internet, then it can make sense to invest in courses, which brings me to my course, the MBMP program. So I'll probably say it took me about a year and a bit to learn all the different things that I needed to learn about Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier to get to the point where I felt comfortable that I could build something like the Unicorn Factory. Now, I have basically taken all of those learnings and curated it into a course that you can do by yourself, where you'll learn how to build your own online businesses with no-code tools like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. It is basically a massive shortcut that will mean that you'll learn what you need to learn in weeks rather than months, if not years. Okay, and so that is it. Those are 5 different ways that you can fund your startup without having to take investment. I just want to finish off by saying that this is probably some of the most exciting times when it comes to building online businesses, because what used to cost thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, can now be done for a few $100, and you don't even need to know how to code. So indeed, very exciting times. So be sure to be subscribed to the channel if you want to learn more about getting your own online business up and running. If you found this video interesting and useful, please leave a like on the video. Also, let me know in the comments down below if I missed out on any things that you think would be a good way to get your startup funded without taking investment. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around for the entire video, and I'll see you back here for the next one.